On July 3, 2017, a group of Arab nations extended the deadline for Qatar to respond to their list of demands in a diplomatic crisis roiling the Gulf by 48 hours. It said Kuwait's emir requested the delay as part of his efforts to mediate the dispute. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates UAE, Egypt, and Bahrain cut ties with Qatar on June 5, restricting access to their airspace and ports and sealing Qatar's only land border, which it shares with Saudi Arabia. The Doha crisis is an opportunity for President Donald Trump in this respect. The White House may convene a summit with traditional Arab allies who recently severed relations with Qatar, Fox News reported June 24. So, the Doha crisis presents President Trump an occasion to show resolve and leadership in U.S. efforts against terrorism and the ayatollah's regime in Iran. He reportedly plans to put more pressure on countries that support Qatar like Iran and Turkey, shore up Washington's ties with Saudi Arabia and its Arab Gulf allies, and signal that America is back in the game after an era of withdrawal by President Barack Obama. To do so, Trump must keep both Qatar and Saudi Arabia as U.S. partners, acting as an honest broker between Saudis and Qataris, rather than tilting too much in one direction or another. President Trump has placed more pressure on Qatar and its partners, but inconsistent messages from within his administration reflecting concerns that Washington not place Riyadh's priorities above its own and absence of a coordinated Greater Middle East strategy hamper his efforts to lead. Although the Gulf Cooperation Council members do feel they have more support against Iran than previously, the jury remains in session on whether Trump will deliver on rhetoric indicating his return to the region is in a decisive way. No verdict can be expected until the threat of military force is paired with sustained diplomatic engagement within a coordinated strategy based on the U.S. priority to discover and disable the financial support for terrorism from nations in the region. In a diplomatic earthquake on June 5, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the UAE, and Bahrain severed ties with Qatar over its support for terrorism and its growing affinity toward Iran. Yemen, the Maldives, and the government of eastern Libya subsequently ceased diplomatic relations with Doha. Riyadh closed its border, gave Qatari citizens 14 days to depart, and kicked Qatar out of the military alignment fighting Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. Riyadh closed Qatar's access to its only land border, through which about 40% of Qatar's food needs are imported. Both Iran and Turkey have increased their exports to Qatar via air and sea links. Trump's coercive diplomacy. Caught by surprise, and with no clear, interagency coordinated strategy, the State Department prematurely called for talks, with diplomatic language that was too soft to command attention much less respect of the party's Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said, on June 9, "We ask that there be no further escalation by the parties in the region." Then on June 25, the Secretary failed to suggest use of coercive diplomacy, which is diplomacy with the potential for use of force if deemed necessary. Rather, Tillerson stated, "The United States will continue to stay in close contact with all parties and will continue to support the mediation efforts of the Emir of Kuwait." Regardless of these two overly soft statements, Tillerson is spot on in seeking to keep all the Gulf states within the American system of partners. Fewer than 2 hours after Tillerson sought to calm the waters on June 9, President Trump accused Qatar of funding terrorism. The nation of Qatar, unfortunately, has historically been a funder of terrorism at a very high level. "We have to stop the funding of terrorism." Although Tillerson also referred to Qatar and terrorism, his words were not as biting as those of Trump.